We are taught that evil is a monster lurking in the dark, but true functional evil is much more pathetic. It is the person behind the counter who confuses professionalism with power. It is the colleague in the break room who equates silence with safety. At the body shop in the Glades, we saw this in its purest, most vapid form. A staff that didn't just fail at their jobs, they turned into a sadistic pack. This isn't an indictment of all mole workers, but a dissection of a specific, modern rot. The pseudo-feminist mob and the self-styled so-called alpha men who orbit them. These women weaponize the language of safety and empowerment to mask a primitive cruelty, while their male hangers-on, desperate for any crumb of social validation, act as the mob's enforcers. They aren't led by conviction, they are led by a desperate need to avoid being the odd one out. For these people, morality is a lifestyle accessory. Their sense of right and wrong is whichever direction the wind of the TikTok or Tumblr echo chamber is blowing. When they harassed a lone individual for the crime of speaking up, they weren't seeking justice. They were seeking the sadistic high of the swarm. They used calculated, violent, and sexually motivated hate, rhetoric they would call oppressive if it were directed at them, yet they felt righteous because they did it as a collective. This group has mastered the modern art of the mass false report. They have learned that if you get enough people to say the same lie, the truth becomes irrelevant. They bombard the management at the Glades and the police with fabricated claims, knowing that institutional cowardice prioritizes consensus over evidence. The authorities don't investigate, they simply count the number of voices. If 10 people lie and one person tells the truth, the system folds. This is the same psychological blueprint that runs through the Metropolitan Police, the same force that patrolled these very streets. Think of Wayne Couzens. Before he was a murderer, he was a Bromley officer, a man who thrived in a culture of the blind eye. He existed because his colleagues chose the team over their moral spine. They heard the jokes and knew the bastard nickname, but they didn't speak up. Like a vapid worker hiding behind a corporate logo, the average officer is terrified of being an outlier. The irony is sickening. These people who weaponize internet posts and collective lies are the ones the Met protects. When a lone whistleblower or a victim of this brigading complains, the Met doesn't see a victim, they see a political nuisance to be silenced. Rather than stopping the abuse, the police effectively assassinate the character of the lone dissenter, siding with the mob, because it's the path of least resistance. The Met is too cowardly to confront a group, so they target the individual instead. Standing alone is the most violent act you can commit against a pack of cowards. When you refuse to subscribe to their digital affirmations, you hold up a mirror to their emptiness. Figures like Joan of Arc were burned not because they were wrong, but because their existence proved that you don't have to follow the crowd to be whole. The alpha males and the pseudo-feminist pack at the Glades are the same breed as those who ignored the rot in Couzens' ranks. They are empty vessels, waiting for the next trend to tell them who to hate. If your morality is based on social validation, you don't have a soul, you have a subscription. And a mob doesn't have loyalty, it only has hunger. The performance of the modern aggressor requires a split personality, the public face of a trembling victim and the private hand of a digital hangman. In the fluorescent aisles of the shopping centre, we see the first half of the act. They huddle in corners, whispering to managers about feeling unsafe, their eyes darting with a practiced, performative terror. It is a masterclass in weaponized fragility, designed to trigger the institutional protective instincts of a system that no longer asks for evidence, only for a narrative of victimhood. But watch the hands. While they tremble for the cameras, they are steady on the smartphone screen. This is the second half of the act, the war of the repost. It is the most cowardly form of harassment ever devised because it creates a digital gang without ever leaving a footprint. They don't type the insults themselves. That would be too brave, too traceable. Instead, they curate a feed of proxy hate, reposting content that mocks the specific traits of their target. They target the flat affect of the autistic, reposting memes that frame a neurological difference as a sinister lack of humanity. They share threads ridiculing those with no friends, projecting their own desperate fear of isolation onto a person who has found the strength to stand alone. They hide behind think pieces and viral videos, laughing privately at the thought of a target's social demise, yet presenting a mask of distress to the world. By using only reposts, they ensure the target feels the weight of a collective, a swarm of invisible voices all chanting the same mockery, while the victim remains technically neutral. It is a psychological guerrilla war fought by those who cannot conceive of a life without social validation. They attempt to exploit these pain points: solitude, neurodivergence, a lack of social rank, because they truly believe these are vulnerabilities. They cannot understand that for the man of honor, these are not holes in the armor. They are the armor itself. They act scared of the person they are trying to destroy because deep down, they are terrified of someone they cannot socially blackmail. They see a flat affect and think they see a weakness to be mocked, failing to realize they are looking at a fortress of stoicism that their vapid, indirect cruelty can never penetrate. They are trying to burn a diamond with a shadow, and when it doesn't crack, they retreat back into their performative tears, hoping the mob they've summoned will finish the job they are too cowardly to start. The performance of the victim succeeds because the institutions built to oversee them have traded objective truth for the convenience of a quiet life. At the Glades, management operates on a currency of optics. When a member of staff weaponizes their own perceived distress, the corporate reflex is to move toward the path of least resistance. They don't look for the digital trail of reposts or the calculated mockery hidden in private feeds. They look for the easiest way to resolve a complaint without a PR incident. In this system, the act of feeling unsafe is granted more legal weight than a documented history of coordinated harassment. This same structural failure defines the Metropolitan Police. As detailed in the Baroness Casey review, the force has long struggled with a culture that prioritizes the team over the individual victim. When a lone person presents evidence of a digital mob, the Met often sees a civil matter or a nuisance rather than a violation. The authorities have learned that investigating a group requires resources and moral friction, whereas dismissing an individual only requires a shrug. They count the number of voices in a room rather than the evidence on a screen, allowing a collective lie to overwrite a solitary fact. The victim is emboldened by this institutional blind spot. They understand that as long as their harassment is indirect, as long as it lives in the grey area of reposted content and veiled social media slides, it will remain invisible to a bureaucracy that refuses to squint. They exploit the fact that the Glades management and the police are terrified of breaking the consensus. To these organizations, a safe space isn't a place where truth prevails. It's a place where the loudest group is never challenged. By ignoring the sophisticated tactics of modern indirect harassment, these institutions become silent partners in the abuse. They validate the performative tears of the aggressor while character assassinating the person who refuses to play the game. In this environment, morality is reduced to a head count. If the mob agrees on a target, the system provides the blindfold. The performance of the victim at the body shop is the ultimate insurance policy for those of such character. They understand that they are nothing without the swarm. At the Glades, we see the modern evolution of the gang, individuals who trade moral autonomy for the safety of a collective lie. For these people, real ethics are a burden because they require the capacity to stand alone. Instead, they choose a membership where right and wrong are decided by headcount. This rot is fueled by a pseudo-feminist infiltration that has hollowed out the brand's original purpose. By weaponizing the language of safety, the staff creates a sanctuary for their own aggression. While they act distressed for management, they curate a digital environment of mockery. This is the hallmark of the actor. Too frightened to attack as an individual, they use the internet to create an illusion of global consensus against a single target. Management at the Body Shop and the Metropolitan Police are silent partners in this. They mistake performative tears for truth because investigating a digital trail requires effort, while siding with a team only requires a nod. They cannot empathize with a person of honor because honor is a solitary virtue. To the harasser, standing alone is a vulnerability to be exploited rather than a sign of integrity. They laugh behind screens because to an empty vessel, nothing is more terrifying than the silence of one's own company.